I wanted to make this video or something similar. I made some points, but otherwise I'm ranting, and this will be a ranting, so I might get way out of, or not. You know, to understand my place, position, whatever you want to call it, because I'm bloody tired. I like video games, amongst other things. And I live in Eastern Europe. It was supposed to be Central Europe, but it's not even, no longer even have the chance to call it that. Everything went downhill and joined the Eastern Bloc. Anyway. This meant, especially until the 90s, pretty serious limitations to what you have access to. Western movies, very filtered. Video games, computers, we didn't have IBM, we had Commodore. It wasn't that big of a deal at that point. The biggest problem with Commodore 64 that I had, no saves. So you either sit down and beat the game or nothing. And while you could practice some coding, programming, you could not save your program. So we were kind of stuck. But that was okay. I mean, we were kids. Moving on. The internet. Look, I don't know how it progressed in the West. Here, using the landlines and that kind of stuff were not really present. And after a while, we got some very limited internet. It was, skipping the rotating it, that kind of modem. And my first thing was to look after porn. Let's be honest. I was like 12 or something. And of course we immediately got some viruses. It was... The funny thing is, it wasn't even very harmful. The problem was it tried to send some advertising things through the cable, but we pulled out the cable most of the times because, I don't know, it constantly got like when it was attached and then it's... Or was it when it was on the internet, it started to fill up the screen with trying to send stuff, pop-ups, and you couldn't work it. One of the two. So it was very uncomfortable, and my parents just realized we need the internet because I will be doing stuff no matter what they say. So having the computer, actually it was my mother's working computer, for the job. So I had to have my own computer and my own internet. Yeah, that was it. So we progressed. And when we bought our first IBM, 386 IBM, at that time that was already out of question, and then it was not. You had to buy a brand new computer if you wanted to upgrade to 486. And I didn't know that and all that, but what can be the difference? Well, the difference was, if you had 386 IBM, you could have Warcraft 1 and Mortal Kombat 2. I got Mortal Kombat 2 from a friend. We both actually Warcraft 1, but otherwise I never got a single game. Anyway, if you had 486 IBM, you had Mortal Kombat 3 and Warcraft 2. That was a bit of a letdown, but I said, okay, at least we have a computer and I can make my homework and that kind of stuff, you know, Word and Excel. That was fine. All I had access for gaming was these CDs attached to some computer magazine which had demos. If you were very, very lucky, it had 1 or 2 shareware games. Those were fine if you came from the Commodore 64. But otherwise, let's be honest, wasn't that big of an advance. So you didn't really see the advancement in technology. But it was okay. Then you got some games, real games. The whole CD was one game. Later, I learned those games were 10, 15 years old. Fallout 2 and that kind of stuff. Thief, whatever. But we enjoyed the games. And they were really good games. They in that period, they were like not even aging. They were great. Of course, when you saw what your, let's be honest, rich schoolmates you played, Neverwinter Nights, you were a bit scratching your head, but you couldn't deny gaming was fun anyway. But so when I started working and time passed and all that, and Microsoft said Windows 10 will be the last operating system they release. I said, fine, I will scrap together whatever I have and buy a high medium tier computer to understand the AAA game industry, Doom Eternal and Quake whatever many and PUBG and GTA ran on high tier computers. The middle tier was, the top of the middle tier was like 5 years old games. That was fine. The bottom tier, you could use it for internet and make some, Word documents and that kind of stuff. Doesn't really work for anything else, but it still had solitaire for our moms. The thing why I believed Microsoft, because I knew because I checked the hard data, and monitor resolution, like above 4K, it won't do a single thing because your eyes, the human eyes resolution, can't sense it. Your eyes resolution cannot do anything with 8, 16, 32K resolution. They are useless, literally useless. So I said, I buy the hardware now and just change the video card later. Of course, we all know this was a lie. Today we know. Of course, this whole thing was led by greed. And I say the whole AI boom was to force you buy bigger hardware, what you don't need at all. You just don't need it. You can't use it. Humans cannot use above a certain threshold. But I saw, I am again fucked. I will never catch up. But, you know, at least I got access to GOG. Steam, I tried it. Its clients, they took so much memory that I could not work on my computer. I either had Steam's client or everything else. Steam is for high-end computers. I'm sorry, but it is. And you know, there came with the AI boom, the RAM crisis and all of that. So high-end computers got more and more expensive. There is no way that in this life I could catch up. Absolutely none. And you know, there is always the regionals. Why? We have the internet. Why are you restricting it regionals like you are distributing physical media? So you don't want to pay the post office. Delivering to Australia, to China, North America, all have the same thing required. There is no price, there should be no pricing restriction, and especially no accessibility restriction. Why are you region coding your DVDs and games? Not DVDs, movies. Why can't I watch Amazon Prime and Foxam and everything else? And even if I use a VPN, they ask some specific bullshit, like ID or whatever. So I still, when I'm using VPN, I can't access Amazon Prime. This is bullshit. Why am I a secondary citizen? I just want to watch streamed some movies. Why can't I do that? Because you are assholes. Then I go up to GOG and I see a dead genre game, Golden Axe. I don't know if you remember it. It existed on all platforms in the 80s. Very basic game. Going around slowly, walking things with your axe or sword or whatever. You know, beat 'em up. And I see this game. Mad King Redemption. Static arena, not very many of them. Every time you reach a new sub-area, in the background comes up this boss character who obviously will have to fight at the very end. Speak some things. Enemies start to come in or spawn from the ground. You beat them. Nothing special. Absolutely nothing special. And then someone pointed out the system requirements. 16 GB RAM. That's insane. This isn't even a hardcore 3D games. This is literally a semi-2D, semi-3D game. There is no reason it demands 16 GB RAM. And look at the storage. 4 GB. So you are saying, to run this thing, sits on 4 GB data, you need 4 times the size of the game in active memory. Are you insane? This is insane. And let's talk about the size of the games. You know, GOG released some Final Fantasy games. I looked at some future projects of Square Enix, and I thought, this looks good. GOG don't let me access it, so I don't mean the future project, what is already out actually. But anyway, what's with like Final Fantasy 1, the HD remake? My computer could run it. I have 8 GB RAM. It was fine. It took 20 GB hard disk space. What is, it would be by modern standard acceptable. But then again, let me check something for Dungeon Antiqua. It's a pretty good dungeon crawler, JRPG space, JRPG genre. Okay, it looks like JRPG, but it's a dungeon crawler. Now let me check. Why don't you? Let's check the second, which is, bigger. It wants 4 GB RAM. Everyone has 4 GB RAM at this point, so I don't think it's anything. It's just Windows 10. That's why. The storage is more interesting. I guarantee it will work on 2 GB RAM if you have that kind of computer. It's just a Windows 10 requirement. The storage is 128 megabyte. It is practically the same content of game like Final Fantasy 1. Circa the same amount of dungeons, more monsters, I guarantee. same amount of abilities. Sure, you have only one protagonist, not a 4-member team. Actually, no. Final Fantasy 1 has one protagonist. I give you there is an overworld, but that's really not an issue. Why is Final Fantasy 1 taking 20 gigabyte hard disk space, while Dungeon Antiqua 2, what is practically the same experience, just, not this HD bullshit, .1 gigabyte. What makes the difference? I tell you what makes the difference. Coding! You are bloody lazy! Like this. What was this? Mad King Redemption. Lazy coders! And same stuff, basically. Nintendo, released this, what Switch 2. If you compare console generations, it is like your usual progression would have been in the console generation if we check the first, second and third generation. Nintendo's problem, and Switch 2's problem, why it doesn't sell, is that when the console generations went from PS3 to PS4 and that kind of stuff, that jump was insane! Not your usual progression, like before. It jumped through 2 or 3 generations. So Nintendo, in their eternal drop-feeding bullshit, Pokemon is the primary example how Nintendo thinks, you could have gave the special physical split in Generation 3 of Pokemon, because Generation 2 was not a real new generation. That was just some bug fixes on Generation 1. But they decided to no. Because of greed. And they fucked up. Because they forgot that the Gen 3, Gen 4 console generation gap is huge. I wanted to talk about some other stuff. But I made my notes in mental, so should have written down, but I am mad and disappointed. And a quick post-it note about AI. Seen a video about statistics of who hired how much AI and who they replaced it with. Make a guess. Did they release a whole department? Of course not. Did they switch over their senior, most experienced people with it? Of course not. I'm not joking. Companies, and not one, but as a trend, released all their junior people. programmers to whoever you want. Now, look, let's assume, just for the hypothetical, that it would have worked out. Why not? You know, best case scenario, that it would have worked out. Then what? I mean, you know, you can't just hire seniors with how many years of experience. You need the juniors to get the experience to become seniors. But you fired all of them and replaced them with AI. So what is your plan? Every fucking CEO in the whole world thought that when the seniors age out, what can be more than best case scenario for them, 20 years, not counting fluctuation and all that, the AI will be advanced enough to replace everybody? Are you fucking insane? Do you hear yourself? Otherwise, your experienced crew age out and you don't have anybody to replace them with. That kind of business plan is insane. What is your spare plan? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.